When I saw those bruises on her thighs, something inside me broke forever. It wasn't just the physical marks that shattered me, it was what they represented. The lies, the betrayal, the complete disregard for everything we'd built together. In that single moment, standing in our bedroom with the evening light filtering through the curtains, I realized that the woman I thought I knew had never truly existed. It was a cold Saturday in January 2025. The kind of day where the Sacramento winter fog hangs heavy in the air, refusing to lift until well past noon. Thad, our 1-year-old son, had finally fallen asleep after an hour of crying from teething pain. I'd walked the floors with him, bouncing him gently, singing the same lullabies my mother had sung to me decades ago. His tiny fists had eventually unclenched, his breathing had evened out, and I'd carefully placed him in his crib, holding my breath as I backed away, praying he wouldn't wake. Ursula had been in the shower for nearly 30 minutes. I could hear the water running, could picture her standing under the hot stream, perhaps washing away more than just the day's stress. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her blue cotton towel, her dark hair plastered against her neck, I was sitting on the edge of our bed, scrolling through my phone, checking tomorrow's sports schedule for work. That's when I saw them. Dark purple marks, 4 on each thigh, arranged in a pattern that was unmistakable to anyone who'd spent years in physical combat. They were finger bruises, the kind that come from someone gripping hard, holding tight, during moments of intensity. I knew because I'd seen them countless times during my wrestling years, had accidentally left similar marks on opponents during particularly fierce matches. These weren't from a fall or an accident. These were from human hands and they weren't mine. Where did those come from? I asked, my voice steady despite the ice suddenly forming in my chest. I pointed at her legs, keeping my expression neutral, giving her a chance to explain, hoping against hope there was some reasonable explanation. Ursula's face went pale. Not the gradual paling of someone caught off guard, but the instant drain of color that comes with being caught in something terrible. Her hand instinctively moved to her thigh, as if she could cover the evidence. I fell at work. Yesterday when I was moving desks in the classroom. One of those heavy wooden ones we got from the district donation. It was a lie. I'd seen enough injuries in my 15 years of competitive wrestling to know the difference between impact bruises and grip marks. Impact bruises are irregular, spread out, often accompanied by scrapes. These were clean, circular, deliberate. Someone had held her thighs while she was. I couldn't finish the thought yet. Ursula, tell me the truth. My voice was quieter now, more dangerous. I'd learned long ago that the quietest voice in the room often carries the most weight. She sat down on the chair near her vanity, still clutching the towel around her body. The silence stretched between us like a physical thing, filling the space with tension so thick I could barely breathe. Through the baby monitor, I could hear Thad's soft breathing, blissfully unaware that his world was about to shatter. Outside, a car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating our bedroom wall before disappearing into the night. His name is Carl, she finally whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. The next 30 minutes became the longest of my entire life. Longer than any wrestling match I'd ever fought, longer than the surgery on my knee that ended my career, longer than the night Thad was born when complications kept us in the hospital for 18 hours. She told me everything, and with each word, each confession, I felt the life I'd known crumbling around me like a building in an earthquake. 6 months ago, she'd met him at Cannon, that upscale bar downtown where Sacramento's young professionals gather on Friday nights. She'd gone with her teacher friends, Amanda and Claire, women I'd met at school functions, women whose children played with Thad at weekend barbecues. They'd been celebrating the end of the semester, drinking mojitos and laughing about difficult parents and amusing student stories. Carl had approached their table, confident, well-dressed, successful. He was a real estate entrepreneur, she explained, someone who'd built his business from the ground up, now managing a portfolio of commercial properties across Northern California. They'd exchanged numbers. At first she insisted it was innocent. Just friendly texts about restaurants and local events. But I could fill in the gaps she was trying to skip. The texts had become more frequent, more intimate. The innocent lunch had turned into afternoon coffee, then dinner, then hotel rooms during her supposed yoga classes on Wednesday evenings. That teacher conference in Europe in October? I asked, though I already knew the answer. My stomach was churning now, acid rising in my throat. She nodded slowly, unable to meet my eyes. It was Cyprus. With him. We stayed at a resort in Paphos. A full week. 7 days and 6 nights. While I'd been home with our infant son, changing diapers every few hours, dealing with a stomach virus that had Thad vomiting at 3 a.m., heating bottles and pacing the floors, missing sleep and calling in favors at work to adjust my schedule. She had been soaking up Mediterranean sunshine with another man. Swimming in crystal-clear waters, eating fresh seafood at seaside restaurants, sharing a bed in some luxury suite while I slept alone in ours, our son crying in the next room. We'd gotten married 3 years ago in the spring of 2022. Her mother, Patricia, had orchestrated the entire event like a military campaign. The wedding had taken place at a historic venue in downtown Sacramento, with 200 guests, a full orchestra and enough flowers to supply a botanical garden. The dress alone had cost $12,000. I remembered standing at the altar, watching Ursula walk down the aisle on her father's arm, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. She'd looked stunning in her white gown, her smile radiant, her eyes seeming to promise forever. Now I understood, she'd been playing a part, acting out a role scripted by her conservative family's expectations. Her parents, particularly her mother, had been pushing for marriage since Ursula turned 25. Good Catholic girls got married, had children, created stable homes. I was 32 when we met, freshly established in my sports commentary career, making good money with the prestige of my wrestling background giving me local recognition. To the Patterson family, I was the perfect catch for their daughter. Why? It was the only word I could force past the tightness in my throat. Ursula stood up, pacing to the window, looking out at our quiet land park neighborhood with its perfect lawns and 2-car garages. I don't know, Sebastian. You're a good man, but what? I pressed, needing to understand even though I knew the understanding would only hurt more. I feel trapped. The motherhood, the teaching job I never really wanted, this house with its picture-perfect garden that your sister helped us find. All of it, it's not what I wanted for my life. It's what everyone else wanted for me. The next morning, after a sleepless night spent in the guest room, Ursula left to stay with her sister Monica. She claimed they needed to discuss the situation, as if her infidelity was a problem that could be solved through sisterly conversation and perhaps a bottle of wine. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I retrieved her phone from the bedroom where she'd left it charging. She'd been careless in her panic, hadn't thought to delete everything. The messages with Carl painted a picture I wished I could unsee. Dozens of texts, some explicit, others romantic, many discussing their future together. A future that apparently didn't include her son or her inconvenient husband. I found the address of his office in one of the messages. Downtown Sacramento, the business district near Capitol Mall, 15 minutes from our house in normal traffic. I arrived at his building just after noon on that Sunday. The office complex was modern, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed success and money. The directory in the lobby listed Hartman and Associates Real Estate, on the 4th floor. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding but my mind eerily calm. Years of competitive sports had taught me how to control my emotions, how to channel adrenaline into focus rather than rage. Carl turned out to be about 40 years old, fit in the way of men who have personal trainers and gym memberships they actually use. His hair was carefully styled, his weekend casual clothes probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. When I introduced myself, "Hi, I'm Sebastian, Ursula's husband," I watched his face transform through a sequence of emotions: confusion, recognition, fear. "We need to talk," I said calmly, but something in my voice, perhaps the controlled tone of someone barely holding back violence, made him nod and gesture toward his office. His workspace was impressive. Cherrywood furniture, leather chairs, artwork that looked expensive, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Sacramento skyline. The desk was clean except for a laptop and a few carefully arranged objects. A globe, a fountain pen set, a photo of what might have been his parents. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app and placed it on the desk between us where we both could see it. "Tell me everything about you and Ursula," I said. Carl tried to deflect at first, claiming he didn't know I existed, that Ursula had told him she was separated, that their relationship had been based on mutual misunderstanding. Each lie was transparent and I let him continue until he ran out of excuses. "Cyprus?" I interrupted his rambling. "Tell me about Cyprus." He fell silent, realizing he'd been caught. "Tell me about Cyprus. And about everything else. Every detail. Every meeting. Every lie she told me while she was with you." Perhaps he saw something in my eyes. I wasn't shouting, wasn't threatening, wasn't even particularly animated. But athletes learn to project menace through stillness, to intimidate through control rather than chaos. Carl began talking. The week in Cyprus had been his idea, a luxury resort he'd visited before. 5-star accommodations, private beach access, couple spa treatments. They'd gone diving, sailed on a private yacht, eaten at restaurants where the wine cost more per bottle than most people's car payments. Did she ever mention our son? I asked, my voice still level. Carl shifted uncomfortably. She said that motherhood was suffocating her. That she'd never really wanted a child, that her family had pressured her into it. I left his office 20 minutes later with a complete recorded confession. Carl had been frightened enough to provide every detail I'd asked for, perhaps hoping that cooperation would somehow minimize the consequences he was beginning to understand were coming. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. That evening, I drove to my sister Rose's house in East Sacramento. She's 3 years younger than me but often seemed wiser, more grounded. She'd built a successful career as a family law attorney, navigating the messy emotional and legal tangles of divorce and custody cases. When I showed up at her door unannounced, she took one look at my face and pulled me inside. Her living room was warm and welcoming, filled with photos of family gatherings and shelves of law books. We sat on her comfortable couch while I explained everything: the bruises, the confession, Cyprus, the recorded conversation with Carl. She listened without interrupting, her lawyer's training allowing her to absorb information without immediate reaction. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she simply hugged me, the kind of embrace that says words aren't adequate. Sebastian, I know an excellent attorney. Rachel Morrison. She specializes in complex divorces, particularly cases involving infidelity and custody disputes. I need more than just a divorce attorney, I said, and something in my tone made her pull back to look at me carefully. What do you mean? I told her about my old wrestling coach, Marcus. 15 years ago, his wife had cheated on him with his training partner, another wrestler from their gym. Marcus had tried to be noble about it, had agreed to an amicable divorce, had thought that taking the high road would somehow preserve his dignity and his relationship with his children. Instead, his ex-wife's attorney had destroyed him in court. She'd gotten the house, primary custody of their 3 kids, substantial alimony. Marcus had ended up in a small apartment, seeing his children every other weekend, paying so much in support that he could barely afford to feed himself. I'd run into him last year at a wrestling event, and the broken man I'd encountered bore little resemblance to the confident coach I'd once known. He'd aged 20 years in 10, his eyes hollow, his spirit crushed. I won't make his mistakes, I said to Rose. I won't be noble. I won't take the high road. I'll take the winning road. Rose studied my face for a long moment. What are you planning? Everything legal, I assured her. But everything possible. A week later, I sat in Rachel Morrison's office in a high-rise near downtown Sacramento. Her practice occupied an entire floor, with modern decor that spoke of success and discretion. Rachel herself was in her late 40s, with steel-gray hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. On the table between us, I laid out everything: printed transcripts of Ursula and Carl's text messages, photographs of the bruises I'd taken before they faded, the audio recording of Carl's confession. This is powerful material, Rachel said, reviewing the documents with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen countless cases of betrayal. With evidence like this, we can certainly pursue primary custody of Thad. There's more, I said, and pulled out bank statements I'd printed that morning. 3 months ago, in October, Ursula had withdrawn $7,000 in cash from our joint account. When I'd confronted her about it yesterday during one of our brief, tense conversations about Thad's care, she'd finally admitted the truth. She'd gotten pregnant by Carl and had ended the pregnancy without telling me. The abortion procedure had cost $3,000, paid in cash to maintain privacy. The remaining $4,000 had funded her recovery at a luxury spa resort in Napa Valley, which Carl had accompanied her to under the guise of a business trip. Rachel set down the papers carefully. Sebastian, you understand that with this evidence, we can likely secure substantial custody rights with Thad? Custody is just the beginning, I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. What else are you looking for? I opened my laptop and showed her what I'd discovered over the past week of investigation. Carl's business was built entirely on reputation. He worked primarily with religious organizations, conservative family businesses, and church communities that valued traditional moral values. His partners were deacons, pastors, and community leaders who made decisions based on character as much as competence. A public affair with a married woman, and abortion. These weren't just personal failings in his world. They would be business-destroying scandals. I see where you're going with this, Rachel said carefully. But we need to be extremely cautious legally. Harassment, stalking, defamation. These are real risks. I'm not planning to do anything illegal, I assured her. I'm simply going to ensure that relevant information reaches interested parties. Carl built his reputation in this community. He should live with that reputation when it reflects the truth. The next 2 months became a masterclass in focused determination. Ursula moved out completely, staying with her mother Patricia in Carmichael. I remained in our land park house with Thad, transforming overnight from a father who shared parenting duties to the primary caregiver responsible for every aspect of my son's life. My days developed a rhythm. Wake at 6 when Thad started stirring, change his diaper, prepare his breakfast of oatmeal and fruit. Spend the morning playing, reading board books, taking walks to the park. Feed him lunch, put him down for his nap. Use those precious 2 hours to work remotely, preparing for my evening sports commentary. When he woke, more playtime, more learning, teaching him new words, watching him explore his world with the wonder unique to toddlers. Dinner, bath time, bedtime routine with the same 3 stories he wanted every single night. Only after he was asleep could I focus on the other project, the one that consumed my thoughts whenever I had a moment of quiet. In March, Rachel filed the divorce papers. The petition detailed the infidelity with dates and evidence, the abortion without spousal knowledge or consent, patterns of deception and emotional instability that made Ursula unsuitable for primary custody. Her attorney, a man named Dennis Cooper who specialized in defending difficult cases, tried to mount a defense. He claimed the bruises were coincidental. The Cyprus trip was a one-time mistake, the abortion was her bodily choice. But when Rachel presented the recorded confession from Carl, complete with specific details that corroborated our evidence, their case collapsed like a house of cards. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Brown who'd presided over family court for 2 decades, reviewed the evidence with a stern expression. The temporary custody arrangement she issued gave me 80% custody, with Ursula receiving every other weekend. The child's stability and welfare are paramount, Judge Brown stated. The evidence suggests significant deception and behavior incompatible with primary parenting responsibilities. That's when I initiated the second phase of my plan. I created an anonymous email account using a VPN and public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop across town. Over the course of a week, I sent carefully worded messages to 3 of Carl's primary business partners. Each email contained detailed documentation of his affair with a married teacher, including photographs from their Cyprus trip that I'd recovered from Ursula's cloud storage, excerpts from their text messages, and information about the abortion. I framed it not as vindictive gossip but as concerned information sharing. Given your organization's values and public stance on family integrity, I thought you should be aware of your business partner's recent activities. One of Carl's partners was Pastor David Richardson, who led a megachurch in Roseville with a congregation of over 3,000. His church ran a community center, youth programs and family counseling services, all centered on Christian values and marital fidelity. When Pastor Richardson received the email with its comprehensive evidence, he called an emergency meeting with Carl. 3 days later, their business partnership was dissolved. The church's real estate portfolio, which had been managed by Carl's company, was transferred to another firm. The loss represented roughly 30% of Carl's annual revenue. Next, I turned my attention to Ursula's professional world. The Land Park Elementary School where she taught was in an affluent neighborhood where parents were deeply involved in their children's education. The school had an active parent-teacher association, multiple Facebook groups, and a communication network that rivaled most intelligence agencies. These parents knew each other, socialized together, shared information about teachers and programs. I didn't post directly or use my real name. Instead, I created a profile using a common name and a stock photo, claiming to be a concerned parent from a neighboring district. In one of the larger land park community groups, I left a carefully worded comment under a discussion about educational ethics. It's interesting how we hold teachers to standards of moral behavior when teaching our children values, yet sometimes those same teachers fail to meet those standards in their personal lives. I recently heard about a situation involving a teacher at Land Park Elementary who engaged in an affair with a married man, leading to an abortion, all while teaching our children about character and responsibility. Makes you wonder about the messages our kids are receiving. I didn't name Ursula directly. I didn't have to. In a community as tight-knit as Land Park, where parents knew the teachers and gossip traveled faster than facts, the pieces came together quickly. Within 2 days, the comments section was filled with speculation. Within a week, parents had identified Ursula and were discussing the situation in hushed conversations at pickup time and soccer practices. The school's principal, Elizabeth Chen, began receiving phone calls and emails from concerned parents. At first, she defended her teacher, citing privacy and the need for verified information. But when I anonymously sent her copies of the medical receipts from the abortion, photographs from the Cyprus trip, and excerpts from Ursula's text messages with Carl, all carefully redacted to remove identifying information while maintaining the core facts, she called Ursula in for a meeting. 2 weeks later, Ursula voluntarily resigned from her teaching position. The official explanation was personal reasons, but everyone in the school community knew the truth. A teacher who'd been beloved by students and respected by colleagues was now unemployable in her chosen profession, at least within Sacramento. In April, I met with an online reputation specialist named Christopher Hughes. His boutique firm specialized in digital presence management, helping clients either build or, when necessary, destroy online reputations. What I needed was somewhere in between. Together, we created a blog under a pseudonym, the Sacramento Betrayal Chronicles. It was positioned as my personal account of discovering infidelity and navigating divorce, written from the perspective of a betrayed husband seeking to share his story to help others. I wrote it carefully, using initials instead of names, changing minor details like occupations and locations slightly, providing enough information that locals might recognize the situation but maintaining sufficient ambiguity to avoid defamation charges. The blog detailed everything: the discovery of the bruises, the confession, the Cyprus trip, the abortion, the impact on our child. I wrote about the emotional devastation, the betrayal of trust, the destruction of a family. But I also wrote about the legal process, the evidence gathering, the importance of protecting one's rights in divorce. Christopher helped optimize it for search engines, using keywords that would make it appear in searches for Sacramento affairs, teacher infidelity, and divorce advice. Within the first week, the blog received over 2,000 views. Local news websites and community forums began discussing the Sacramento teacher affair scandal, even though no mainstream media outlet would touch it without confirmed names and facts. The story took on a life of its own, growing and spreading through the echo chambers of social media and community gossip. Ursula's name became toxic in educational circles. She applied to several teaching positions in neighboring districts, Elk Grove, Folsom, Natomas, but somehow principals and hiring committees always seemed to have heard whispers about a scandal. In a profession where reputation and trust are everything, the cloud of suspicion was enough to eliminate her from consideration. Carl attempted to contact me twice during this period. The first time, his attorney sent a letter threatening legal action for harassment and defamation. Christopher had anticipated this and had structured everything carefully to stay within legal boundaries. We responded through Rachel, stating that all published information was factually accurate, properly documented, and fell under the category of truthful speech and legitimate personal narrative. The threat went nowhere. The second attempt was more direct and more desperate. Late one night in May around 10 o'clock, Carl showed up at my house. I was in the living room having just put Thad to bed, when I heard aggressive knocking on the front door. Through the peephole, I saw Carl standing on my porch, his face flushed, his posture agitated. He called my name, demanded to talk, said we needed to work this out like men. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called 911, reporting that a man was at my home refusing to leave, that I felt threatened, that I had a small child in the house and feared for our safety. By the time the police arrived 7 minutes later, Carl had apparently realized his mistake and fled. The officers took my statement, noted the incident, and advised me to file for a restraining order if he made contact again. The police report created yet another piece of documentation that would later prove useful. In May, the final blow came to Ursula's family relationships. Her parents, Patricia and Robert Patterson, were devout Catholics who attended Mass 3 times a week and based their entire worldview on church teachings. They'd been proud of their daughter, the teacher, had bragged about her to their church community, had held her up as an example of proper Catholic womanhood, educated, married, a mother. Someone anonymously mailed them a package containing copies of the medical documents from Ursula's abortion, along with a detailed timeline of her affair. I've never confirmed who sent it. It could have been anyone who had access to the information at that point, as the blog had made many of the details public. But I had my suspicions about where the information might have originated. Patricia Patterson's reaction was swift and brutal. In her worldview, abortion wasn't a difficult personal choice or a medical procedure. It was murder, a mortal sin beyond forgiveness. The affair was bad enough, but the abortion was unforgivable. She called Ursula a murderer, a disgrace, a fallen woman who'd betrayed everything the family believed in. The following Sunday, in front of their entire church congregation during announcement time, Patricia stood up and publicly disowned her daughter. She stated that Ursula was no longer welcome in their home, would not be included in family gatherings, and should not consider herself a Patterson any longer. It was a dramatic, cruel gesture that accomplished what I'd never needed to do myself. It isolated Ursula completely from her family support system. Throughout this period, Ursula tried desperately to reach me. She called from different numbers after I blocked her cell. She sent emails to my work account. She left notes on my car. Each message was some variation of pleading, begging me to stop whatever I was doing, claiming she'd lost everything, saying she couldn't find work, that Carl had abandoned her, that her own family had turned against her. She accused me of being vindictive, of going too far, of punishing her beyond what was reasonable. I never responded directly. All communication went through our attorneys, and only regarding Thad's custody schedule. Rachel advised me to maintain absolute silence on personal matters. The moment you engage, she said, you open yourself to accusations of harassment. Let the consequences play out naturally. In June, I heard through business connections that Carl had sold his stake in Hartman and Associates to his remaining partners at a significant loss, reportedly for less than half of what his share was worth. With Pastor Richardson's departure and the subsequent loss of other religious organization clients who'd heard about the scandal, the business had devalued substantially. Carl's partners were apparently happy to buy him out at a discount and rebuild the company's reputation without him. Word in Sacramento's business community was that Carl had moved to Los Angeles, trying to start over in a larger market where his Sacramento scandal would be less known. I occasionally checked his LinkedIn profile. He'd started a new real estate venture, but with far less impressive clients than his previous operation. The power of local reputation that had built his business had been turned against him, and in Sacramento's tight-knit professional world, there was no recovering from this kind of exposure. In July, the court finalized our divorce. California is a community property state, which meant that the house and our financial assets were split 50-50 despite the circumstances. Judge Brown couldn't award me more of the marital property just because Ursula had been unfaithful. State law was clear on that point. But the custody arrangement remained 80-20 in my favor, which was what truly mattered. We sold the Land Park house, the place where Thad had taken his first steps, where Ursula and I had once planned our future together. After splitting the proceeds, I had enough for a down payment on a smaller but charming home in East Sacramento, near the fabulous 40s neighborhood. It had a fenced backyard perfect for Thad to play in, and a park with a playground just 2 blocks away. I furnished it carefully, creating a space that felt warm and stable for my son. Thad took his first independent steps that September in our new living room. I was there to see it, to encourage him, to catch him when he stumbled. These milestones, the first steps, the first clear words beyond mama and dada, the first time he said, "I love you, Daddy," these became the moments that mattered most. Ursula had chosen to miss them for her afternoons with Carl. That was her loss, one she could never recover. Ursula eventually found employment as an office manager at a dental clinic in a less affluent part of Sacramento. The salary was roughly half of what she'd earned as a teacher, and the work was far less fulfilling than educating children had been. She moved into a studio apartment in Arden Arcade, a neighborhood known more for its affordability than its charm. The woman who'd once vacationed in Cyprus and stayed at luxury resorts now lived in a 400-square-foot space with a fold-out couch and a hot plate. When she came to pick up Thad for her weekend custody visits, she looked different each time, tired, older, diminished. She'd lost weight in an unhealthy way, her clothes hung looser, the spark that had once animated her face was gone. She was always polite during exchanges, asking about Thad's routines and needs, but she never met my eyes. She'd arrive in her modest used car, take our son for 2 days, and return him Sunday evening with the careful attention of someone terrified of giving me any reason to challenge the custody arrangement further. Last month, my sister Rose came over for dinner. We sat on my back patio while Thad played in a sandbox I'd built for him, the evening air warm with late summer heat. She watched me watch my son, then asked quietly, "Do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" "How far you went." She lost everything, Sebastian. Her career, her family, her reputation. Some would say the punishment exceeded the crime. I thought about that question while Thad pushed his toy trucks through the sand, making engine noises and creating elaborate stories in his toddler imagination. I thought about the bruises on Ursula's thighs, about the week she'd spent in Cyprus while I'd cared for our sick child, about the baby she'd aborted without telling me it existed, about the months of lies told directly to my face while she smiled and kissed me goodnight. She made choices, I said finally. Every step of the way she chose. She chose to start an affair. She chose to continue it. She chose to go to Cyprus. She chose to get pregnant by another man. She chose to end that pregnancy without telling me. She chose to keep lying even when she had chances to come clean. I didn't make those choices for her. I simply made sure she experienced the natural consequences of her decisions. Rose was quiet for a moment. Natural consequences? Sebastian, you orchestrated most of what happened to her. I exposed the truth, I corrected. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't lie about her. I didn't create false evidence. Every person who made a decision about Ursula, her employers, her parents, Carl's business partners, they made those decisions based on accurate information about her actions. If the truth destroyed her life, perhaps she shouldn't have lived a lie. My sister didn't look entirely convinced, but she didn't argue further. Maybe she understood that my certainty wasn't really about revenge anymore. It was about survival, about protecting myself and my son from becoming like my old coach Marcus. Broken, defeated, stripped of everything by someone who'd betrayed him. Thad is almost 2 years old now. He says, "Daddy," with perfect clarity and reaches for me when he's scared or hurt or just wants comfort. He falls asleep in my arms after bedtime stories, his small body relaxed with complete trust. Every morning when he wakes up, I'm there. Every night when he goes to sleep, I'm there. I'm his constant, his security, his world. Ursula lost her son's daily presence, lost the career she'd trained years to build, lost her reputation in the community we'd lived in, lost her family's support and love. Carl lost his business and had to flee the city where he'd built his success. I lost a wife who, it turned out, I'd never really had. But I won the war. More importantly, I saved my son from growing up in a broken home where his mother treated commitment as negotiable and truth as optional. Sometimes late at night, after Thad is asleep and the house is quiet, I think about whether I'd do anything differently. The answer is always no. I protected myself and my child using every legal tool available. I ensured that people who valued reputation and character knew the truth about those who'd violated both. I made certain that Ursula and Carl couldn't simply walk away from their choices without consequences. In the end, justice isn't always pretty. It isn't always proportional. But it is necessary. And in this case, justice meant ensuring that the people who destroyed my family paid a price for that destruction. Not through violence, not through illegal action, but through the simple, devastating power of truth exposed to those who cared about it. That's not revenge. That's accountability. And I'd do it all again tomorrow. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.